imagine a site crashed while running live, serving 50 million users. I wrote some solutions which circumvented those crashes. I was working on AI from 2005 itself. In 2011, I was working with Bank of America. If you are a Bank of America customer and you want to log in, there will be cookie called SSHC. That cookie was written by me. There was no cloud, there was no AI. I don't want to become a manager, a people's manager. That was the first time I heard the term called cloud. 2020, I landed up in it as a solution architect. I built compliance framework for a federal giant. In 2022, something else happened, right? My journey is organic, from a Java developer to security architect at AWS, and then working for my own self. In this 20 minutes, I will tell you all about what I did in last 20 years so that you can take advantage out of my experience and shorten your journey, save yourself some years and become something you can become right now. So let's dive deep. I started my career in 2005 after a degree of computer science from India. My first job was a Java developer who was working for a telecommunication giant in North America. My client was called Nodal, which were like a thick or fat client. That's what you call them at that time. And those fat clients were talking to backend servers to present data to the admins or users. I wrote a couple of modules, and I clearly remember my team lead was reviewing all those modules. I got lots and lots of comments on my code. I don't know how to write code because I was coming from a college where I taught myself computer programming. So I was writing lots of code, but my code was really shitty. The reviewer, my team lead, who reviewed my code the first time when it was going into production, he told me after my PR was submitted that if you are not a part of problem, you are not a problem. So even if you got hundreds of comments on your code, but at the end your code is going to solve a problem, it is totally fine to have review comments from anyone in your team. That was my first lesson of software engineering. That make sure whatever you commit to production is thoroughly reviewed. From 2005 to 2007, I worked with that telecommunication client. What do I learn there? I learned how a project is shipped into production. So the product I was working on was IVR systems, which contact centers used to automate their customer service. So you can say I was working on AI from 2005 itself, but at that time it was not called AI. It was automation. And the highlight of that assignment of mine was I got an opportunity to come to US in 2005 to work here on site for my customer, and I enjoyed my time here for 3 months. Then I went back to India and never came back in next 2 years. That telecommunication giant ended in 2008. So from 2005 to 2007, I was a Java developer. Then in 2008, I got another assignment. 2008 was a time of crash, right? Lehman Brothers and many banks crashed at that time. I was very young in my career, maybe in my mid-20s probably. But I got an opportunity to go to Ireland. Again, I was a developer, but I was working for some other product. It was also in a telecommunication domain. So I traveled to Ireland for next couple of years. And there I learned how to basically write the whole module on your own. Earlier, I was an engineer working under team leaders to make the product, ship the software, and then be done with it. But after 2008, I think my stature or my experience increased and I become the team lead. So in Ireland, I got the opportunity to lead an engagement, which was basically working at customer site in Ireland and then communicating back in offshore teams to drive a large scale project. Still, my domain was telecommunication, but my area of expertise increased. I went from front end to back end. Here I was mostly working on Java code, which was basically on server side. So I understood a little bit more about server side in 2008, 2009. From 2005 to 2008-9, my formative years of software engineering was happening. I learned a lot of things. I started to lead teams, but till this point, I was not aware of the thing which I really want to do or go for. So this was a very pivotal moment I was 100% sure that I don't want to become a manager, a people's manager, because that was not my cup of tea. I could not handle people or manage them at that time. I really want to be in a technology space because I really felt that technology will give me chances to grow and be in tune with what's happening in the environment. So with that desire in 2009, something else happened in my life. Like after 4 years of my life, I got another opportunity, and this was very intentional. Why? Because I chose it. I chose it not to go for money or anything else, but purely I want to work on an opportunity which puts me into a niche. So in 2009, that was the first time when I was introduced to security. I actually found an opportunity in US again. Somehow I got lucky to come back here in 2009, 2010, and I was working on products which were security focused. If you go back 10 years, 12 years, there was no cloud, there was no AI, there was nothing much on decentralized compute arena. It was all data center based applications, serving millions and millions of users. So my entry into security was working on a product called SiteMinder, and I worked on its backend, the policy engine which served millions and millions of requests, and it was written in C++. So I switched from Java to C++. When I worked on this product called SiteMinder, it opened my eyes about production level scale. This product, SiteMinder, was used by banks like Bank of America, Chase, and many banks. All of these banks at that time were having like 70-80 million users. And today, 70-80 million users can be easily managed because the bandwidth, the compute, the network, they are all increased a lot. At that time, it was not like that. They had data centers and they have servers. So in 2011, I was working with Bank of America. That was my first full-time job in US. But actually, before Bank of America, I want to emphasize on one point, the real important point where I felt something really happened inside me and I figured out what to do. I think when I was working with CA or Computer Associates on this product called CA SiteMinder, I was in a level 3 production support where I will take care of the priority 1 bugs which comes into live environments of these financial institutions. So at that time, the biggest problem with these applications which serve on scale was these applications crash on runtime because of memory leaks or core dumps in backend systems. Every second day, I happen to work on a core dump from companies like Lockheed Martin, British Telecom, Bank of America, Chase, Verizon, Vanguard, all of them like giants, and they crash in production while serving millions of users. SiteMinder was basically authenticating and authorizing users which are coming to these websites. So basically those core dumps, those memory dumps gave me lots of insights about how these memory dumps happen and how the product can crash under load. And at that time, I made a solution which was instrumental in figuring out how to work around a core dump. Imagine a site crashed while running live, serving 50 million users, and suddenly the server crashed. Now what happens? That was what was happening. So I wrote some solutions which circumvented those crashes and gave the company some breathing room to patch them. So that working with customers, working with SiteMinder engineering team, working with lots of engineers who were writing C++ code gave me lots of awareness about how security is done in enterprises at scale. That time I understood game is about engineering, but you don't have to just write code to be an engineer. I decided that I'm not gonna write code for all my life. From that moment onwards, I decided that programming is going to be an enabler to me and not my bread and butter. It was 2012. And then I joined Bank of America as a senior security engineer, working with their infrastructure team and their authentication team. Those teams were serving millions of users. And the biggest problem they were facing in 2011 was session hijack. A lot of users are having their sessions hijacked and they were calling customer support and reporting frauds. Like imagine there are like 70-80 million users and then around 10% of them are getting frauds every day. The hackers are taking over their accounts and now they are, doing the transactions. And then these users, when they get to know, they call customer service. The problem was the bank was overwhelmed. A lot of dissatisfied customers, a lot of disgruntled customer service, and still there was no solution. So I happened to work on that problem with a product security architect at that time, with whom I learned a lot. I brought in my programming and coding skills. That was my gateway to security. I worked with this product security architect to create a solution, I wrote an Apache module which went into reverse proxy layers and started protecting sessions. Basically, I wrote a solution which created a cookie called SSHC. If you are a Bank of America customer, you have an account with Bank of America and you want to log in to your online account, you can do that right now. And there will be a cookie called SSHC. That cookie was written by me like 13 years back. So that was my contribution to bankofamerica.com. But the bigger contribution was from Bank of America to me. I understood how I can enable businesses, how I can enable different teams, and how I can solve bigger problems. That's where I become a security architect. So the next job which I took, take my experience one level forward. I joined ADP. Business model of ADP was ADP will have contracts with enterprises around the world. And at that time, the number of customers ADP was around 600,000. And every employee, every contractor of those companies, like imagine 600,000 companies are using ADP. Now imagine all of these employees logging onto their employer's website and then going to ADP to check their payroll or check their HR systems. So traffic on ADP and the services ADP provided was huge. And I happened to work on a team within ADP which was handling this centralized security, which was giving authentication, authorization, single sign-on to all of these consumers. But the complexity was now you don't have a coherent consumer, right? In bankofamerica.com, 100 million users are from Bank of America. Here, you have like 100 million users coming from different employers. So you have to treat them differently. The single sign-on, the access management system was totally different. But I spent there 2.5 years and I learned so much. I devised the systems which handled these millions of transactions. So I took care of the partnership between ADP and ADP's customers for authentication, security, and authorization needs. That was an amazing opportunity. Just pushed me a little more towards curiosity. And now the curiosity was I need to expand. I was focused too much on authentication and identities. By the way, identities is my favorite service. IAM is my favorite service. My whole career is devoted to IAM. IAM is one service if you can learn, you are set for the future. Everything in an enterprise revolve around identity. If identity is compromised, you are really very easily can be hacked. That's why phishing, spoofing, and social engineering is the biggest threats to the world today. So I understood the importance of security, identity in a digital enterprise world and how can this information convert it into money. So in my first phase from 2005 to 2008, I was chasing development. In my second phase, I was focused on entering into security space, identities. In my third phase, I started to understand how to convert security plus development into money. So I joined JP Morgan Chase. I was a principal architect who was working with a group of architects who were basically driving Chase.com. Chase.com was again, maybe more than 100 million consumers and probably second biggest bank in US and across Northern America. So I happened to work with a group of architects who was driving Chase.com. So that was again a great experience working with leaders who were driving changes. Here I learned how to deal with vendors, partners, bringing security products and converting them into substantial solutions for business needs. So I enabled myself and started looking at security and development from the angle of money and the business. And that's where my first startup came in, where I worked for 2 years. It was called AppNexus. It was like probably 2017. AppNexus reached out to me through LinkedIn and basically they were going to become a $1 billion company, a unicorn, but they were not public yet. So they were trying to become a public company and they were in process of putting an IPO out. But to do that, they need to make sure that they are really capable of taking RFEs from different customers and deliver them. Now, what does that mean? That means if you need to deliver an RFE, you need to be compliant, something like SOC compliant or ISO compliant. Your customer will ask you for compliances. So basically, my job was to make AppNexus compliant. And for that, I need to create a new security services from scratch and tie every business unit with it. My next 2 years went in building lots and lots of APIs. That's where I started understanding how you can use JOT-based authentication or OpenID Connect-based protocols to bring a coherency to the whole enterprise and then make sure that every transaction is driven by JOT tokens, which is signed by your own root of trust. So working at AppNexus gave me a lot of freedom to build from scratch and work on identities and API security and root of trust. These three things are so valuable in security market. So these three things actually figured my next opportunity. I joined BNY Mellon. I was leading a platform security team, basically to bring solutions like secrets management, PKI as a service to business units. Why is very important. Why is very important here. It was 2018 or 19. That was the first time I heard the term called cloud. Why? Because BNY Mellon was building a private cloud so that their business applications can onboard to this cloud instead of building in silos. They wanna make sure their development process is refined and done via platform engineering. So I was basically leading a platform security engineering team, again in a capacity of an architect / senior developer, because I want to do individual contributor work and work on large scale problems. This was my choice, and out of that choice I built secrets management, PKI, which was backed by HSMs, Kerberos. I solved the problems of privilege access management, and I did a lot of work on auditing Linux. So I brought authorization in at a level of users and machines interactions in BNY Mellon. As I said, cloud was the name which I heard first time, and when I heard it first time and worked for it for a couple of years, I understood what cloud is. So working at BNY Mellon and building platform for their private cloud gave me a little more insights about what can happen in the future. And that was another pivotal moment when I decided that I want to shift myself to cloud now. Development, security architecture, security leadership, and now cloud. Why? Because cloud was basically virtualization on steroids and backed by super friendly APIs which run on HTTPS. Wow. This was a revelation. Now you don't have to buy computers, set up data centers, provision, onboard this and that. And then when you need to scale, you don't have to go to anyone to add servers. You can just say, oh, you know what? Elasticity. Increase my load. Or you can write customization, which can spin up more resources for you at a scale at the runtime. That was basically a revolution in infrastructure side. And that was also possibly a base for AI applications to come in. Why? Because AI applications need massive amount of compute, but people don't have money to pay for that much compute. So when you have a cloud, you can get compute easily. That was the moment when I decided that let's work on cloud. And then I started working on cloud and how to get into AWS. Because what better I can do? AWS is the pioneer. AWS is where everything is happening. But going to AWS was not easy, for sure. It took me a couple of years and a lot of rejections and then a lot of luck. In 2020, I landed up in AWS as a solution architect. AWS gave me lots of great opportunities. In the first year, I was designing incident response plans for global financial service customers like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Farmers, and whatnot. I ran tabletop exercises with them for 1 year. Why? Because they want to reduce their response time in case something happened, which is very critical. Like somebody stole their cloud key or access key and now an hacker has an access to their environment. What can happen? And then, people can take over your compute or EC2 instances and then ask you for ransomware. So I was solving these problems. While creating those scripts, I understood more about legal forensics, risk, compliance, automation, development, center of excellence, platform engineering. I interacted with all of these teams and ensured they can respond to incidents in a better manner. That was one of my assignments, but my adventure with AWS did not end with just tabletop exercises. I built compliance framework for a federal giant who was a customer of AWS. But at the end, I learned a lot about this ecosystem of AWS engineering, AWS support, AWS enterprise consumers, cloud, security, AI, and whatnot. Basically, it was a learning into how to turn compute into money, how to turn AWS into business. And that was the thrill to go to customer site and make them happy. So I spent 1 year building a compliance framework for a federal giant, and then I spent some months assessing a big scale cloud posture for a gaming giant. Then I also did a large scale cloud migration for a brokerage client which were moving their option trading engine to cloud. Then I also built a DR site for one telecommunication giant who were thinking that they will be attacked in their primary environment. So I went on and did all these things till 2022. In 2022, something else happened, right? ChatGPT came, and then Amazon needs to compete. They released a service called Bedrock, and Bedrock come with managed models so that enterprises can fulfill their need of GenAI technology. As GenAI and Bedrock become famous and Amazon wanted to sell as much as possible, I started working with clients on GenAI workloads. So I used next 2 years from 2022 to 2024 understanding GenAI and AI workloads and how they are going to be utilized in cloud by different consumers, different enterprises. And believe me, the footprint of GenAI and AI is in such so big that you can make careers out of it. And that's what I decided to do. I wanted to do three things after I learned a lot about cloud, security, AI, and financial institutions. I decided that I want to do three things. I want to teach people, mentor them to become bigger engineers and get better salaries and do businesses or do whatever they want. I want to share my experience with you all so that you can better yourself. Second thing I want to do, I want to be an independent contractor to different enterprises, which is going to be my day job. I will be interacting with enterprise customers as an individual and forging contracts with them. Right now, I'm working with a couple of banks. Third thing which I'm going to do is look for future. I am building AI agentic security services. My interests are fully baked into AI security. I will teach AI security, talk about AI security everywhere. So people who are going to learn from me, AI and cloud security will be the focus for you all. And you can learn from my experience so that you know earlier what you need to do. My bootcamps, my learnings are not just technology based. They are going to shift your mindset. They're going to make you think big, and they're going to let you tap into my experience and energy. It's not just a bootcamp. That was my last 20 years. Hope you enjoyed it and stay tuned for more.